Who knows if I think we're live. We are live. Hey, look at that. We are live. Hey, everyone. Welcome once again to the spoiler room. Thank you for venturing down the stairs, pulling up a chair, pouring a drink, and sitting with us tonight because, man, do we have something to talk about with you. If you haven't seen the title of the episode, yes, we are talking about a classic horror film, and I've got a great crew with me tonight to talk about Humanoids from the Deep. Yes, that's right. It's Where You From month here, and we're talking Humanoids from the Deep. And a crew that I've got with me tonight is a fantastic one. Once again, every week is a fantastic crew. But tonight, we have her back in the spoiler room once again with us. It is the multi-talented one and only Angelique. Hello, Angelique. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Great to have you here, especially to talk about this film, because it'll be great to get a female perspective on this movie.
Oh, I can't wait.
I know, I'm very excited. And yes, as well in the spoiler room, the co-host, who's a man who's become my right-hand man, always an equal and never duplicated. It is Mr. Ian Simmons. Hello, Ian. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, and I also cannot wait to talk about this movie.
Yes, in Humanoids from the Deep, 1980, from Barbara Peters with two E's, and executive produced by Roger Corman. So you know what you're in for whenever you have Roger Corman's name involved in a project, produced or otherwise. So, Miss Angelique, you do these so well. Could you try to give the synopsis of Humanoids from the Deep?
Well, Humanoids from the Deep is the story of a small fishing town. There's kind of a local fight going on whether they should just continue fishing the old-fashioned way or open up a salmon cannery, and they want the salmon to be more plentiful, and apparently there's been some kind of scientific tinkery going on, which has created some rapacious salmon creatures that decide to come on land and have their way with any woman they find.
So they're coming on land twice. Sorry.
Yes, folks, as you saw the disclaimer at the very beginning of the webpage, yes, this is meant for mature audiences.
Yes.
Viewer discretion is advised, especially for this film.
These creatures want your black lagoons, ladies.
Oh, God.
They are long and hard and full of salmon.
They're going upstream.
This is what the podcast is going to be, folks. We're just going to be doing puns and innuendos for the next hour. Enjoy.
Oh, we haven't even scratched the surface of the racism and environmentalism either.
Oh, I'd like to show her my French flipper trick. No, anyway.
Danny DeVito, is that you? Sorry.
He stopped by. He left already. He had another appointment. He's always the sunny side of the spoiler room. What? Oh, okay.
Oh,
sorry.
Yikes.
Okay. Humanoids from the Deep. Yes. Angelique, you remember when you first saw this film?
It was during one of my 31 and 31s.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Like it was I've known about it, and I have a book full of Corman posters, and that was always one that I was like, well, I really need to watch this. And I did a 31 and 31 where I did all first time watches, and I threw this one on the list and I watched it, and I was just like, holy shit. So I watched it and then immediately bought it, and I watch it quite a bit. I've seen it, several times just because it's so just, what the hell am I watching?
It's definitely an interesting piece of cinema. You know, it hits all the Roger Corman points. If you know anything about Corman, and I know some, I actually talked to our good friend Scotty D, who helped me out because this a little bit with Corman, but basically Corman has those points to where if you don't have something happening every 5 minutes, you're going to lose your audience.
Yep.
And you need nudity, and you need gore, blood. You need blood, you need nudity, and you need something to happen every 5 minutes.
Explosions, yeah.
Anything. And this film kind of follows that to a T.
Well, I mean, in the first 10 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
they already break two of the cardinal rules of cinema. You kill a dog and you kill a kid.
I noticed that right away. It's like a kid and a dog. Yeah, they broke the rules of cinema right there.
Yeah, well, they kill multiple dogs. It's like, no one is safe. They kill every dog in the town except one. So they as a setup for, well, something I guess we'll talk about.
Yes.
Yeah, there's now I didn't actually realize this was a Roger Corman film. I might have missed that in the opening credits because I'm like, I feel like this is. Did I put on Jaws by mistake? What is? They're just like swimming under the water through the murk, and
I have that in my notes that it is Jaws like.
Well, and the other thing that struck me, I mean, I literally think blacked out the first couple of minutes during the credits because I saw that footage, and then the title comes on, and it's Monsters. And I'm used to seeing movies that have alternate titles, but in very small parentheses underneath Monsters, it says Humanoids from the Deep. It's just like you said, Mark. It's almost like a squeaky voice, like, Humanoids from the Deep. What is going on with this movie? And then I finally came to when I saw, Vic Morrow being a racist, as the, in the fishing town. I'm like, all right, I'm dialed in. Let's do this. With that amazing blonde curly fro.
That blonde curly fro. Was this a first time watch for you? I take it.
I remember it like it was Sunday because it was
Sunday.
I watched this on Amazon Prime because it was free, but I'm going to at some point seek out whatever Blu-ray this is on. It's one of those, Angelique, you brought up the book of movie posters. When I was a kid and I would go to the video store with my parents, of course I'd go to the horror section.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd kind of like eyeball the beaded curtain section that we're not supposed to go into unless we're 18. But this was one of those VHS boxes I remember seeing. I'm like, what is this movie? It's got such a cool look to it. Unfortunately, like what's on the inside of the actual movie is not nearly as cool as what we see on the outside, particularly when it comes to the monster. No, it's really not.
See, and that's the wonderful world of VHS video stores. Video stores. That's why I'm good. I miss that because walking down the shelves, they had to come up with elaborate ways to catch your eye because you had all these videos in this. So yeah, you'd have the woman laying there, by the water, and it said Humanoids from the Deep. You're like, oh, some stuff's gonna go down in this movie,
and it kind of does. Anyway, yeah, the most egregious example of that I think was the movie The Supernaturals. I think that's what it was. Like Nichelle Nichols from Star Trek was in it, and this really cool like skeleton zombie army poster look to it. And when we rented it, my parents and I, and watched it, and there was nothing going on. It was practically an asylum film. But anyway, let's get back to Humanoids from the Deep.
Yeah, Humanoids from the Deep. It opens. I mean, we're not kidding, folks, when we say about the first act is Jaws-like. I mean, the film opens with basically a POV of the monster, and we get the setup of the fishing town. And actually, I think before that, we establish how racist this town is. Within the first,
I've never heard that particular phrase used to describe somebody of Native American heritage, and I was like, no.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting kind of racism because usually you see racism against blacks or but this, it was like there's one Native American guy I think in the town. They mention, I think, no, he meets up with some friends, but we don't really see them. But it's not, you don't get the feeling there's like a large population in this town. It's basically him. So it's just something I'd never really experienced before. Usually in a movie about racism, you're talking about like other races, other cultures. So it was an interesting take. I was just amazed because Vic Morrow's character is a carbon copy of the guy who would play in the movie that killed him 2 years later, Twilight Zone, the movie, to the point where there's even a scene in a bar where he's sitting there with his friends, like letting loose these horrible racist tirades, and they're sitting there getting all uncomfortable, like, you're talking a little loud there, buddy. It was like lifted right and placed into the Twilight Zone.
I wouldn't doubt that they probably pulled from that.
But that's the thing, is like, I love Vic Morrow as an actor because he makes such a wonderful, like, casual bigot. You're like, I just really want to put this guy on a couch and interview him. Like, how did you get here?
Well, what I found funny with his, with his character, and actually with the material is, like I said, they don't really mince words and hide the fact. I mean, we start right off with the debate of the canning thing, because that is the underlying theme. That's the catalyst for all of this. I mean, so within the first few minutes, we established that our one hero, and I put that in quotes, our hero, the guy in between, he's just trying to keep the peace. We have, we have Vic Morrow, who is just, Slattery's just a prick, and then you have the other side. So you've got your three dynamics, and you're introduced to that like right away. They're talking about the cannery. He's talking about saving the fish, saving their lands. It wasn't the fish, it was their lands. And then they go out, and that's when they don't take long before we get the first encounter with the humanoid.
Can we just call them the Inseminoids? Because that's
that's a different movie.
That's a different movie.
No, I've not seen the Inseminoids or whatever it is, but they need to swap names, because that's what this is.
So the creatures show up, and yes, and this is where the kid gets killed. I mean, it's funny. I forgot that part because it's been years since I watched this last. I used to watch it a couple times every so often. It was on the VHS rental. I watched it when I was when I probably shouldn't have watched it, but I watched it because that's the 80s. And, I didn't remember too much of it. I remember the monsters and that, but watching it now, I forgot that the kid got ace, right in the beginning. It's like, holy crap. Because I thought the kid was going to fall in and maybe they were going to get him out or whatnot. I'm like, oh no, he gets pulled down and there's the blood pool. Nope, he's dead.
He's toast.
Well, what I love about that is that they've got this, it's almost like a Final Destination Rube Goldberg scenario of everything going wrong on that boat, because not only does the kid fall over into the water and the dad's freaking out like, my boy, then the gasoline gets tipped over. The kid tips it over on accident when he's going to try and help. And then the dude with the flare gun, it goes off and blows up the entire boat in spectacular fashion. A wonderful, practical shot. And like everything else in this movie, everything that blows up at least 3 times.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're working on a limited budget, you got 3 cameras, you're going to get this shot 3 times for a big explosion.
No, I'm not saying that they shoot it from different angles. I'm saying stuff just blows up. Like everything has like 4 or 5 bombs inside of it. For everything from cars to boats to just a house.
That's just taking a page out of ye old Glenn Larson's book. So
we don't have much money, but gas is cheap. So
that's right.
Light it up, fellas.
You make 3 well-timed gas bombs, put them in this boat, and that shit's gonna time it right, and there you go.
And I'm not complaining at all. I thought it was really spectacular.
Which, again, you look at this film, and everybody puts this in the cult classic because it's Roger Corman, and it one of those types of films. But this film, you could tell, had some backing and budget behind it. Namely, because that explosion, holy crap. I mean, that explosion was like 50 feet in the air. You see a piece, and they have guys in the canoe who are supposed to be just guys in the boat, but that's another film crew. right? But you see those guys,
dangerously close to the explosion.
right? They were really close to it. I'm like, holy crap! Like, but I did not expect an explosion that big in a film like this. Like, oh, okay, we got at least some budget going on here. You know, I mean, this film, I think, was kind of intended to be the, you know, a theatrical released film. I mean, it's as much as people talk about it being a cult classic. I think it got theatrical release. I didn't get a chance to look it up, but you could tell it had some backing behind it.
Yeah, I could tell, particularly in the climax. I mean, that would be a lot of fun to see on a big screen at like a midnight movie or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but because they had the explosion, and then, you know, some of the cinematography in here as well, and they build tension. Angelique, wouldn't you say there are actually some kind of scary horror moments in this film? I mean, it's camp, sure, but there are some parts in here that are generally creepy.
Oh yeah, I mean,
not just the rapey parts either.
Well, not just that, because those are terrifying all on their own, and I'm sure we'll get to those.
Yeah.
In a moment, but like, you know, just the stalkery under the water shots, you know, going through the seaweed, and just it's just creepy. That's why, you know, you don't like opaque water, because you never know what's down there.
Well, yeah, and it taking such a page out of, I mean, Corman is classic for it. There's no hiding that they're taking the Jaws angle with it, because you got James Horner and his music with the creepy theme going on. Early James Horner, who composed the score for this in like 14 days.
It's got gorgeous scoring throughout the whole thing.
I love the music. I actually have the soundtrack. I played just a little bit I don't have it on vinyl, but I do have the soundtrack to Humanoids of the Deep. And the other one and get used to the music, folks, in here. Not only is it signature James Horner, a lot of his music and instrumentation, but Corman uses music cues from this movie and Battle from Beyond the Stars constantly in his other film. So,
hey, when you pay for it, you know, it's yours and you can use it whenever you want.
That's right. So if the music sounds familiar in this movie, you've probably heard it in a few other films before. But you've got the creepy, because we don't get to see the full monster for quite some time in this film. The title character, like in their full glory, we get to see maybe a head or an arm or a hand, but yeah.
Yeah, even that's following the kind of the Jaws motif.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike Jaws, though, once the monster is revealed, this thing isn't really that impressive. I mean, I almost wish someone would take this movie and somehow digitally like put in a new monster, even an effect suit. If you could just like reshoot those scenes and integrate them, because I like the idea of the monster. They look kind of cool, but just the costumes themselves, I can't tell if it's supposed to be seaweed falling off of them or hair. They've got these, particularly towards the end, there's this one monster that's attacking the house with the mom and the little boy in it with these like distended limbs. It looks like a marionette or something. It took me right out of the movie. I know that's a weird complaint for a low budget, you know, monster film, but I'm going to say the monsters were the least interesting part of everything else that's going on in this film. I love the drama about the cannery. I love the racial tension going on in this town, and particularly how that tension is resolved between Johnny Eagle, who's the Native American kid, and Hank Slattery, who's Vic Morrow's, you know, bigot that we talked about. They've got the way that storyline is resolved is totally not what I was expecting, and it's not how other movies would have dealt with it. It's a smart, kind of a fun interpretation. But yeah, the monsters I could leave.
What about you, Angelique?
I mean, I thought they're pretty cool.
Well, I like the design. I like the design of them. It's just I wasn't crazy about the costuming. It looked really kind of. It looked like what it was, or a low budget costume.
Ian is a very foreboding individual, but you don't have to agree with him. It's okay. No, just kidding.
That's true. I understand. My pinky is up.
His pinky is up.
I mean, I have issues with the, I guess, the biology aspect of the creatures, because especially getting more into the rape and things like that, different anatomical points between fish people and human people. There's not much sense to be made.
I mean, if you think about it, yeah, biologically now, secret revealed here. I pulled back the veil because, I'm open about a lot of things. I was 2.5 years into my biology major. I was going to be a marine biologist. Okay. Until I failed my fish course. So anyway, ichthyology. But I learned that all but 8 people failed that class. So might have been the professor. Anyway.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You are right, though, Angelique. They're disturbing scenes for sure, but I was trying to think, how does that work? Because fish normally, I understand they're mutated into humanoid type forms, but nothing leads me to believe that anatomy would grow and change with them.
Right. And wasn't it was salmon and frog DNA, right?
Right.
So not even frogs reproduce through intercourse.
No, so to be just totally disgusting, because I'm a guy, the most he could do is, slime, just
well, but they also,
there you go, ladies.
Yeah.
There's the money shot right there.
That's also pretty much the story of how I dated in high school.
Me too. No.
Wait a second, was that you? No, no, I wonder if it was sort of like a Prometheus situation where they had this kind of base DNA that was evolving, but then picked up characteristics of what was in the environment with it, like, because humans shed skin cells all over the place, so maybe some human DNA got into the water and mixed with their stuff and then grew into, I don't know, I'm giving this movie way too much credit.
All right, Dr. Malcolm, calm down.
Well, hey. It's chaos.
Life finds a way,
They were too busy thinking they could get bigger salmon that they didn't know,
but
stop
they
and
grew
say,
wieners.
should they should give salmon wieners? They could give them, but they never thought, well, there you go.
Hey,
tilapia now have tallywhackers.
I'm gonna critique my own theory and just say, now that is one big pile of shit.
But no, in all honesty, though, for a film like this, I liked how they worked the angle, because everybody, let's put it this way, I could tell right away, even the first time I watched this, the minute you have the cannery introduced, and this is Dr. Was it Dr. Slater?
Dr. Susan Drake?
Drake, because it seems to be a common name among scientists. What the heck is that?
And Canadian rappers.
Yes.
Sorry.
But
just lady scientist A.
Right. Yeah. The minute they introduce the lady scientist, though, you're like, oh, they're behind the humanoids. Right? Right? You have the sus, as the kids nowadays would put it, the sus cannery folks,
and they
introduce a scientist. You're like, oh, they're behind. It's like, yeah, I know where that part's going.
See, I didn't even pick up on that until much later in the movie, because I was paying attention to other things. Now it's very obvious, but not. It's going to have some rewatchability, though, because now I'm going to be going back to watch. The way I interpreted her character is, she is the scientist who's in this town with a bunch of rubes who don't really, think too highly of educated women. And so she's kind of put off by people and sort of socially awkward. But now that I know what her real motives were, next time I go back and watch, I think I'm going to see her in a completely different light. She's like, yeah, I am really way above you people, and you're all idiots. Just wait till you see what's coming.
You just want to watch it again for that band. That's all. That rockin' that rockin' band. I loved that band. I love the guy who stared at his hand when he played, and the lady on the piano. It was like, I love that band, and I was so happy they showed up later at the Sabbath Fest when the guy goes, "Should play something upbeat," and she's like, she's like, "People have died, dude. We're not gonna play something upbeat." He's like, "Play something upbeat." Like, okay, fine. And then dude was like really pickling. I love that band.
That was the musical stylings of Jerry and the Atrix. Sorry.
They rocked though. I liked that. It gave it that small town feel, but along with the mentality of the folks, because typical racist fashion. All the dogs did get killed because the humanoids, you got to give them credit for this. They take out all the dogs, so, they don't have anything attacking them. But the guys immediately thought the Native American was the one who killed their dogs. It was like, because we ticked him off. When it's like, no, how do you draw that line?
These are not bright folks.
No.
But what I loved is the there's the dance that was celebrating the announcement of the cannery, and all the corporate folks were there to announce stuff. And then Johnny Eagle walks in with his dead dog. Now before that, we'd seen Hank and his kind of cronies show up late to the party. I love this exchange with Hank and his wife. She says, "Have you been drinking?" And he says, "Sure, I've been drinking. Come on, woman." He just drags her inside. But then Johnny Eagle shows up with his mutilated dog and sets it down on the floor, and they have this heated exchange. And then as they're kind of like kicking Johnny Eagle out, everybody kind of goes back to, there's not like, nobody's leaving, nobody's screaming or horrified, like, "Oh my God, there's a freaking dead dog here. I think good old Hank might have murdered this animal." It's just, there's so much going on here with the culture of the town that you could just take the sea creatures out of it. It kind of reminded me of the Stephen King's Silver Bullet, where the stuff going on in the town was as interesting as the werewolf business.
Well, yeah, you got an interesting town dynamic. You got the young kids with making out in the back, where we get our gratuitous flashing scene. In the back of the truck there. But then when they see their buddy in a fight, because our one hero shows up and helps Johnny Eagle, he gets in on the fight too, and everybody starts punching each other.
It was so cool because you feel like that's how a fight would break out. Now, I love the two kids making out in the car, because the way that's set up is the party's going on the inside. They sneak out to the car to like do it, and you think, oh, this is where the creature's going to break through the back of the car and kill them. But no, they survive. They're part of the fight for just a second, because the guy sticks his head out and gets socked in the face.
Knocked out.
He gets knocked out. He gets clocked. He's like, "I'm going to be a man in front of my girl," and bap, and he's out.
Yeah.
The thing is, with all the things that we've pointed out, I'm sure we've all been there. And Angelique, I'm sure for you as well, you've been to this felt like a kind of like an average small town in America in many ways, didn't it?
Very much so. The folks with the money are making all the decisions, and they're right because they have the money. So we're just going to go along with them. And anybody who is different from us or who opposes us is not only wrong, but they're dangerous and a little nuts. So they must be destroyed.
Yeah, it's just because this fight breaks out, I'm like, that's a small town fight. I've seen similar fights break out.
Hey, he looked at me crossways. Get him.
Well, there was also to your point, Angelique, about the money situation. there was the sidekick, and I can't remember the character's name, but he got killed. The sidekick to Jim Hill, our protagonist, our very strange protagonist, played by Doug McClure. He's got like a young boy who hangs out with him. I don't know if it's his brother.
It's his brother.
Okay, it's his younger brother. But Johnny Eagle approaches him about like, stopping the cannery, and the brother and his girlfriend, they agreed. They're like, yeah, let's go on the boat and we'll talk about it. And that leads to this whole great subplot that then gets kind of twisted and turns the movie in a different direction. So again, like the town politics weaves really well into this silly story about sea monsters. I was sitting there just enraptured. I'm like, why am I so invested in the characters from this 1980 B movie?
It really reminded me a lot of Stanley.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was a Native American character who was off the beaten path, fighting against, really the baddest cats in town, the mob, I think it was, and who used the environment, snakes, as his weapon.
Oh yeah.
I don't know Stanley. I don't know the movie.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh.
When did it come out?
Oh gosh, 74 or 76?
Okay. It's just called Stanley?
Stanley.
All right.
Yeah.
1972 it came out.
Oh, was there? Okay, 72. I was off.
A young Seminole Indian uses his rattlesnake to take revenge on all those who believe he believes have wronged him. Which, again, you're right about being fascinated by the characters in this film, because here we have the Native American, and you could have easily gone the plot of eye for an eye. He rallies his guys, which I think there were only one Native American actually in the cast, because we never see the other group. We just hear him talking to people. But he decides to take a legal way, and he manages to find, and since it's an eco thing, he manages to find a big city lawyer to do pro bono work for them. And I'm like, that's a really cool angle to take with this group. I mean, you could have easily just gone small town, fight between these two groups, but instead he's like, wow, that's actually really cool.
Yeah, and that opens up the Hank and his friends. They figure they can just bully their way to victory, but then they get spooked when they find out that they're actually getting attorneys involved. And so they decide to take matters into their own hands, which leads to some violence, which leads to more violence. And then the sea creatures show up and all hell breaks loose, but they're almost incidental to what's going on.
They are. You're absolutely right. I mean, you get your statement with the genetic modification, which I think this is one of the earliest films where they're talking about actual, like, GMOs, more or less.
Yeah.
Am I off on that, Angelique? This is like one of the earlier films
I mean, the only other one like similar to this that I would even think would come close would be like the Island of Dr. Moreau.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like a major plot point, manufacturing creatures like just for eating and for supply, this is to my knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's hard to point out because that's become such a trope in horror.
Mm-hmm.
The whole genetics thing. But I think this is one of the earliest films too to address that. One of the first, which surprised me as well. I'm like, wow, this is a subject that would work yet today. Actually,
right.
And in fact, a number of the things that are faced in this film, you could still see being a topic today outside of the rapey mutant salmon, which
now just substitute any politician.
Wow. Whew.
Now, the two of you are more experts on humanoids than I am, but looking at no, not I'm talking about the movie, not actual salmon monsters. And that wasn't meant as some kind of an insult. Oh, you guys are the humanoid experts over there. But I'm looking at IMDb. It's Barbara Peters directed this, and it's uncredited Jimmy T. Murakami. Do you know anything about? Was this like a shadow director or an assistant or what happened? Do you know?
Funny story about that. Unless Angelique, you know it, you want to tell it.
No, I don't.
Okay, I was actually looking up some trivia on this. So the film that we finally got was not the director's vision. And once I found this out, it makes a lot of sense of the way this story plays out. Apparently, Corman did not think there was enough nudity and exploitation factors in this. So as IMDb said it, and if you watch the film, it totally makes sense now how those scenes feel cut in. The film was finished and Roger Corman felt the picture needed more sex and ordered scenes shot that showed humanoids attacking, of course, ripping clothes off the other young women. Barbara Peters refused to shoot the scenes, protesting that they were inserted purely for show gratuitous nudity. Corman fired her, hired another director to shoot the additional footage. Ironically, most of that additional footage hit the cutting room floor and never actually was put in the film, but he actually fired her, and that other director is the guy who shot the sexy scenes.
So there was even more sex in this movie?
Apparently so.
Oh my God. Well, no, because that answers a question, because when I was watching this movie, I was thinking, because Barbara Peters is the only one she appears as director on the screen. I was thinking, this is very odd considering, all of the talk about the male gaze and female exploitation. I'm like, this director is giving as good as they get. And it was very odd, not because there was nudity, but because there was the kind of exploitive nudity, the ugly kind of sexual assault and gratuitousness that was going on. It's not titillating, it's not cute, it's just very strange and very obvious. I'm saying this, looking at things through a 2020 lens, but I don't even if I was 11 years old renting this in a video store, I would be like, this isn't cool. Like, there's breasts, but I kind of want them to go away because this is making me uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's definitely not erotic, alluring, anything like that. It's scary and it's gross and awful.
Well, it's not needed, and apparently Ann Turkle, our doctor, who I want to talk about in a minute, because it makes total sense now once you hear this, even with her character, what ends up happening with her character in the film. But apparently she once said she chose to do the film because it was an intelligent, suspenseful science fiction story with a basis in fact and no sex. So all the sex scenes were the inserted ones later on. There was no intended actual, that part apparently with it. But then after filming the additional footage, the sex content changed, and apparently she was so appalled by the film, the final cut, that she she asked the SGA, I guess, to try to take her name off the movie.
Wow.
Well,
I can see why. Now that's the thing, talking about rewatchability, that'll be something else to go back and see how obviously these scenes were put in and how the movie would work without them. Like, if there's a way to skip those particular chapters and just watch the regular sci-fi smart version that she saw or she read for.
Yeah, and what's interesting is even the way this film ends, which it ends on a cliffhanger, folks, and there's rapey things involved. So you can imagine where this ends up going as far as what happens to the ladies in this who end up getting caught, getting raped by the I hate saying it, the humanoids, they get impregnated, but you could still do that scene even without the display of the sex at all, or the rape at all in it. I mean, it could be implied, but you could easily do that
Yeah, it
scene.
does not have to be so graphically put out there.
Oh, hey, and we do have a viewer tonight in A Bunker Productions. The BFD himself is chiming in, and he says there is a version out there somewhere that has the rape scenes and such cut from the film,
cool.
Which I would love to see, actually, because that leads me to the Drake character, because you see what you're talking about, Angelique, these exploitation, elements in here, but then you've got a character like our scientist who, at least in the beginning, until we get later on in the film, actually it's a fan edit. Okay, so when someone was smart enough and went through and do a fan edit, thank you, Bib. We're gonna have to look that up. I'm gonna have to try to find that, because her character has some great lines in here. Like, you get the introduction at the very beginning, how the head of the cannery goes, "Our little scientist." And he points to her, and she looks at him like she's just gonna cut a fucker. I mean, she just looks at him like, yeah, I got a PhD to be referred to as, So she looks at him like that. You also get another scene in there where our protagonist guy, she goes fishing with him. He has no choice. The cannery scientist is going to go fishing with him, and he drops the line, "You seem damn sure of yourself." And she goes, "I have to be with men like you around." So, I mean, she drops these bits, and she has a character who's strong. She's the most knowledgeable about these creatures. She's standing up to the cannery. You have all these elements. And then, as you said, Angelique, and then you got all these exploitation elements like cut in that it just really twists this film around. If you take those out, I think this works just fine without the exploitation factors in there. The majority, I mean, the makeout scene in the back of the truck, okay, you get a little flash. That's not exactly gratuitous. I mean, they're young kids.
Even leaving in, up to the point, like, killing the boyfriend and then chasing the girl at the beach, the one in the white bikini.
Right.
Ending that there with her screaming. Chasing the girl from the tent up the beach. It's implied, oh, okay, something's going to happen. What's going to happen, but we don't need to see it.
Well, because they cut back. You see the naked woman running across and I have no problem with nudity in movies, especially in these early kind of films, because there's a lot of sex in it. But it's when you do cross that line to sexual assault. And I guess you could hide behind the idea, well, these are mindless creatures that are just trying to reproduce, and they just see another form of life. There's not necessarily any moral judgment on the part of the attacking monster, but that still doesn't absolve the audience of making their own judgments. But when she's being chased on the beach, she's fully naked. Turns out there's two monsters, and one of them jumps out at her. But then there's an intermittent scene, and then we cut back to the monster on top of the woman. And I think this is before we are treated to the whole backstory of, like, yes, they're trying to inseminate human women. So you're just like, is he eating her? It's not quite clear. But then when you find out what's going on, you flash back to that scene. You're like, oh God, no.
Yeah, well, that's what was interesting. At first, I thought, okay, maybe they're biting and eating them, until they mentioned, you're right, until they throw it at angle, well, they're trying to procreate with the ladies. And then I'm like, oh God, that's what's going on in that film, because it's not exactly, it's not, thank God, it's not well lit. I mean, it's really hard to tell what is exactly going on. In fact, later on, they actually attack a woman and like bite her and like, like just attack her, and you're like, oh, okay, so they're attacking, and then you're like, oh no, they're trying to breed, and I'm like, oh well, that's just awkward.
Well, and also because this lady, the victim, I think her name is Peggy. She's the one
Peggy,
who's,
yeah.
she was the one in the car with the
Mm-hmm.
boyfriend, and then later we see them on the beach and they're just like walking around exploring, and they get attacked in the water, and her boyfriend is horribly mutilated, and yet he's still alive, kind of like a RoboCop situation where he's like reaching out and he's all deformed. She gets taken and assaulted by this thing. She gets discovered later on the beach and she's still alive. At the very end of the film, we discover, oh, she's still alive. She's got like, scars on her face and everything. But then she goes into labor. And when I saw the movie Alien versus Predator Requiem in the theater, it was one of the few times in my life where I've actually been physically disgusted watching a movie. I have a high tolerance for things, but there's that scene in the birthing ward where the predalien had inseminated all of the mothers in the pregnancy ward, and then face huggers, or chest bursters start coming out of their pregnant stomachs, like 3 at a time. I'm like, this is gross. This is morally reprehensible. And we get that in Humanoids from the Deep in the last scene. And now keep me honest here. In that last scene, we know it's the Dr. Drake, overseeing this pregnancy for her own, evil ends and that of her corporation. But I think we're told that, or it's implied, she's wearing the surgical mask the entire time. I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So could this be something that they shot without the actress's involvement when she, because they knew that she would be uncomfortable? They was like, oh, we'll just get another actress with blonde hair, we'll put a mask on her and just shoot this little epilogue.
It did. I don't know. I wouldn't put it past Corman.
It's either that or, I mean, maybe that was part of the storyline, but they didn't have the exploitive scenes.
Right. I think maybe that they would have had in there, they could have had it intended, but it's implied. You don't actually see the actual abuse going on. You just know that she was held by them. And then when they discover her, she's fastly pregnant. It could be implied, and you could still have the U factor there without having to actually see multiple times them actually do these things.
Right. I'm thinking about that birth scene where it,
sure,
much like Alien, except it pops out of a pregnant woman's stomach.
Right.
I mean, I draw very few lines, but that's kind of beyond the pale. And I just feel like Ann Turkel, when she's making these kind of statements about what a smart, intelligent science fiction movie this is, I don't see that scene in that movie.
Well, we don't see her in the scene with the actual creature,
right? And that's what I'm getting at. Like, was this kind of tacked on after that whole kerfuffle with the leadership in the movie?
It could still be her with the mask, and initially when they shoot it, you don't actually see on camera what happens. You might get the sound of the creature or whatnot, and then you go to credits.
Yeah,
you could cut it without the actual bursting scene, I think, and it would work, I think, on a better level than seeing it. Don't get me wrong, practical effects in here abound. I loved how they looked. I loved the puppeteering in it. I loved how they looked as far as how well they were done, as disturbing as they were. But I'm wondering if maybe the actual bursting was cut in later. Angelique, what do you think?
I don't know. See, that's the thing, because it had to have it had to have something,
right?
In it, and I mean the whole climactic scene at the wharf at the salmon festival.
Okay, let's go ahead.
They were after the ladies. You could tell they were after the ladies. It wasn't getting graphic the way it did, during those beach scenes, but they were after the women. So that was part of the story. It was part of the storyline. I think it was in there. I think the birth and the monster was there, kind of like a Frankensteinian thing.
And it does make sense, because if Turkel is saying sex, I think what she means is actual sex scenes. She may, it was intelligent with no sex, meaning she most likely meant there's no actual portrayed sex. May have implied, but no actual like
on camera
humanoids violating people and ripping their bikinis off. No, not in the
getting groped
script
by groupers.
Right. It more of a, I'll say it, kind of a 70s implied thing, to where it may not exactly be shown, but if you're paying attention, which then makes this film a lot smarter. If you take out all those scenes and it's implied pregnancy, because you do get the scene on the beach where they find the one woman with her belly open. So I think you're right, Angela. It is intended, but I think when Ann Turnkel was saying the actual sexual portrayal on screen, I think that's what she meant by smart, in that it's implied. You could put two and two together. We don't have to show it because we're letting the audience be able to put the pieces together themselves, what actually happened, without actually having to show it, which again puts this film on another level.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't need to see a halibut have his way with somebody.
God bless you, Glenn. I have no problem with the creature tearing off a girl's bikini, just so long as most of the torso goes with it. Okay, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
One of the things I loved, this is before I realized how rapey this movie was. The scene on the beach with the tent,
with the puppet,
a guy with the ventriloquist dummy. The girl gets completely naked. Again, no fault on principle, but the creature comes into the tent, and as it's attacking people, we get the reaction from the ventriloquist dummy. Its eyes move like, "Hey, what's going on here?" Like twice. The first time, like, wait, did that doll's eyes move? No. And then he reacts again. I'm like, but the guy who's puppeteering him is getting murdered. Are there now like possessed dolls in this movie? It's become a lot more interesting.
Demonic dolls versus humanoids from the deep.
Yes.
Oh, you better be careful. Charles Band might
I was just gonna say, Charles Band probably just heard me and he's like, oh damn.
He just stirred in his sleep.
I just stirred the slumber of the band. Oh no, Charles! I've woke the Charles Band. I have to wake him. He's got to finish up his series of Evil Bong and Ginger Dead Band films. He gave us the cliffhanger. He gave us a cliffhanger, and nothing ever happened. But
wouldn't that be a spliff hanger?
With Humanoids of the Deep, one of the two things, especially this third act, I mean, they really go for broke. We're kind of past, we're cut up past the rapey scenes now. We're into this final part again, which is, I think, the proper movie that the director was putting together. I was actually impressed by the scope of actually having the humanoids show up at the Salmon Fest and start attacking people, because up till now they've been knocking people, taking people out here onesie twosies by themselves, but they go full on alien, monster attack at a big festival. So we've got this invasion.
Well, yeah, because they mentioned that there are like 3,000 missing specimens or something that they couldn't track down. So you really get the sense that these things, that the humans are up against it. Now, yes, I agree. The scale visually is quite impressive. Something that I had the misfortune of latching onto. I'm going to share it with you, and hopefully it doesn't ruin the experience next time you watch this classic. The sound mix, they use the same woman's scream over and over and over again. I wanted to turn the sound off for like the last 15 minutes of the scene, because every time I heard, like, no, it's kind of like that door sound effect with the squeaky door you see in commercials and TV shows, or the Wilhelm scream, except imagine if everybody who died in a war movie died Wilhelm screaming.
It's the Wilhelmina scream.
Oh,
yes.
That is now a thing. Thank you.
But still though, I was impressed that they went there. You're not. They have the fest, and I was impressed that a film like this, they go there on that scope to where he's reporting it on the radio. I mean, this is not a contained event. I mean, the broadcast guy is broadcasting, that this attack is happening. You have all these, there were like 5 total, maybe 3 in one shot, humanoids attacking everybody. So I thought that was interesting and impressed me, because that kind of surprises you. You don't think they're going to go in public and actually start attacking the masses. And you get some wonderful scenes, though I'm still trying to figure out the logic in this, folks. I think it was supposed to be really implied that there was a larger force of humanoids than we saw on screen, because we only see maybe 3 total attacking left and right. They spread gasoline into the bay, but we never actually, all the humanoids, as far as we know, are on land at this point, yet they're spraying them. So I think was it implied that there were more under the water that they were going to? I think
so. Because remember that dock, fell.
Right.
And, you had creatures coming up trying to get everybody that was clinging to the dock.
That's true. And then there was bubbly whirlpools as well. Maybe that was intended to be. I was just trying to figure out the logic of just suddenly he goes from they're coming on land and attacking people to go, get the gasoline and start spraying it in the water. And I'm like, they're on land. All we've seen is them on land and on shore, nowhere near your gasoline. Why are you?
I mean, that would have been fun. Like, I think a modern movie would have taken this approach, which would have the humanoids attacking the boat as well.
Mm-hmm.
That was spraying the gasoline and the land, so you can cut between 2 or maybe even 3 locations for the all hope is lost moment. I love the inconsistency of Madman Mike Michaels, the DJ of KFSH, K-Fish. He's hanging out with Miss Salmon, who, of course, she gets attacked by a creature, and of course, its first move is to swipe her top off. But he's narrating all of this violence that's going on, and back at home, our hero's wife and kid are alone, about to be attacked. But she's got the radio on, and she's hearing all of this, violence happening. But he's narrating like, "Oh my God, they're coming in, they're grabbing people!" But when we cut back to the festival, the creature has moved in to attack the booth. It's in there, and they're just like screaming and stuff. You cut back to the radio, and it's like, oh my God, and they're coming. I mean, I think he's almost in the booth. I'm like, what? Is there another Madman Mike Michaels on Radio Row at the Fish Festival?
Well, let's look at this again. That scene where the humanoid is coming into the booth is where I believe that's where at some point the top gets ripped off. So this may have been an insert scene as well, to where you were only supposed to hear the narration on the radio. Because if you think about the way this plays out, one of my favorite sequences in this film, in all honesty, even with the extended arms humanoids, is the standoff between the mom with the kid and the humanoids attacking the house. I think if you could take out a few of those inserted shots, this is a wonderful sequence, in all honesty, because she hides her kid. She knows to lock the doors. She grabs a knife, and she knows the thing's going to bust through the door. So she hides to the side of it. It's like, maybe you should have given our heroine in Halloween a tip. Because instead of standing by the door, she stands to the side, wait till the hand comes in, and she starts stabbing the shit out of it. I'm like, yes.
I liked this scene, but I wrote down in my notes, Carly Simon in Halloween Season of the Fish. Because I kept confusing that actress for Carly Simon. She had the hair and the teeth.
Now I want to see that film, though.
One other thing before I forget. I think it was Peggy in the scene where she's introduced. She's like in the bathroom doing her hair or something, and she thinks she hears her boyfriend. When she comes out of the bathroom, is like going into the kitchen or whatever, there's some clothes hanging on a rack, like a shirt, and a shirt falls off a hanger. And it makes the sound effect is the knife being pulled out of the sheath. It's like, I'm like, how heavy is that shirt? What's going on here?
Well, let's never mind the fact that she's dressed in the lingerie, and yet she has some friends coming over, not her boyfriend. And I'm just like, why is she dressed in lingerie when she's having people coming over? And she wasn't even wearing that lingerie when they go to the party. She put on something. I'm like,
Hashtag key party.
This is not. Oh God, Ice Storm. I'm not even going to think of that movie. That's just going to bring back bad memories.
I mean, far be it from me to question anybody's at-home wardrobe choices, especially during this time.
Oh, absolutely. You know what I mean? But I mean, Angelique, am I off though? I mean, I'm like sitting here going, she's getting ready. You're expecting more sweatpants and t-shirt, but she's in, I got a boyfriend coming over, negligee type thing. And I'm like, you've got friends coming over.
Those are pajamas. I mean, those aren't like, hey, my friends are coming over pajamas.
Right. That's what I mean is that those aren't, hey, I got friends coming over. Those are.
I'm sorry, guys. If y'all were coming over, it would be it would be a sweatshirt and jeans, you know.
I just like the idea of going like shopping and going into the my friends are coming over pajamas section. Like, what's that? I'm imagining what that's like.
Sweatpants and sweatshirt. What?
Yeah. But I'm thinking like specific pajamas. Like, what pattern is that? No.
Mismatched socks.
Mismatch. Yeah.
And hair half out of a ponytail.
There you go. Yeah, that would be it. But I was just trying to. I'm like, okay, whatever. There's just one of those gratuitous shots. I'm like, okay, let's put her. But
just a little sprinkle of sleaze.
A little sprinkle of sleaze. But then Corman went in and inserted all kinds of sleaze after the fact.
You got to stop using the word inserted, Mark. It's becoming.
Or do I? No, no. But the whole sequence with the mom, I loved. It's actually tension filled. It's well directed. You could tell this part was stuff that Barbara Peters did, just like initially some of the sections we've seen with the Doctor as well. She's a strong female character. She's defending her home against, protecting her kid against these animals that she's scared, but she decimates one. I mean, she just stabs the shit out of one, guts falling over, and she's just like, and she's ready to almost stab again. She almost kills her husband. Yes. Which was wonderful. You knew what thing is, I knew it was coming. I'm like, oh, that guy that jiggle at the door. No, that's your husband. No, that's your husband. No, don't swing the knife.
Oh, that would have been a completely different ending to this movie. One thing I do want to mention about that pier scene is our good old friends Hank and Johnny Eagle. In every other movie of this kind where you've got these kind of archetypes, you're just waiting for the head honcho in the town who's horribly racist and corrupt to get attacked and eaten by these creatures so everyone can cheer, yay! But we don't get that. They team up to save a little girl from sliding down into the water. And even then, Hank gets down there and Johnny helps her up. And then you're expecting, okay, now here's where the creature's going to come up and pull Hank down and he's going to get his just desserts. But no, Johnny Eagle pulls him up and they just kind of have this moment. It cuts away. They don't get any kind of a sappy epilogue. Unfortunately, that's the birth scene. But you're just kind of left to wonder, like, okay, are they going to make up for it now? Is Hank Slattery going to see the error of his ways? Are they both going to become horribly racist against fish people because they have a common enemy? Either way, these are wonderful possibilities.
It is a great angle. What's even more interesting with the Johnny Eagle character is that, again, as mentioned earlier, as I said earlier, there's an easy way they could have taken his character, just let the guy die or whatever, but he's saving all kinds of people. He's going around popping fish guys left and right. I mean, he's saving people, and you're right. He saves the racist guy, which you're like, okay. And then that is a great scene there to where we don't just get a kumbaya moment immediately, like some films would all immediately, they lock hands and crescendo music, and then they both nod at each other and they both run off together paired up to go fight, one limping, but no, he doesn't grab his hand at first, and Eagle's like, quit being a dumb shit, just grab my hand, you fucker. I don't care if you're racist or not. Just that's what I love about the Johnny Eagle character. They stay consistent with his character, and I loved that. And that's another great part in this film. that has a lot of problematic parts.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that, once I read that those scenes were inserted, it makes this film, the way it plays out, total sense.
I'm glad that you did that bit of research and shared that with us, because it kind of puts it into a different context. I mean, it's hard to watch the first time around. It's weird to watch the first time when you're thinking, oh, this is a female director doing this. I wonder what that story is. And then you find out the story. It's more horrifying than any fish monster, but it does make it the idea. And Mark, you told me that there's a remake of this thing that
there
you
is
can apparently see on YouTube. Do you know that? I don't know if you've watched or if you know anything about it. Yeah. Did they stick to the formula of the film, or did they try and do something closer to what the script was going to be?
Oh no, they change it around because it's 96, so we're talking PC we're talking the PC movement in that, so they tone a lot of things down. Ironically, it's still produced by Corman. This is a remake produced by Corman, and this is where, thank you, Scotty D, shout out if you ever actually listen to this. Thank you so much for your knowledge. You are a master, and I love all your film knowledge. I asked him about New Horizons video because that's who put out the remake, was New Horizons. And New Horizons was actually Corman's production studio. He pretty much, the New World, was it New World Pictures or whatever that he had? He sold the name, kept just about the rights to everything, rebranded himself, the production company, and New Horizons was one of them. And they're the one that put out the remake. So he executive produced it with a male director. They toned down. There's no racism part. Instead, it's tree huggers, basically. It's eco warriors against the canning company, which is already in full swing when we open the movie in the remake. So the canning company's already there. The dad, played by our favorite nerd, is it Robert Carradine? He plays he plays the dad of the girl who is girlfriend to one of the eco warriors who's standing up against the cannery. And he's a weird character. Angelique, did you watch the remake?
No, I've only seen the original.
Okay. Hope you guys don't mind me spoiling some of this for you. Please. Okay. So anyway, his character, the way they write him is somewhat similar to our hero or whatnot in Humanoids, but they make him far less, kind of like the Doug McClure character, but not quite, because he's actually one of the two brothers that owns the canning company and runs it. Okay. So he's conflict of interest. His daughter is secretly an eco warrior with her boyfriend, and they're trying to catch the company who's been dumping synthetic hormones into the water to make bigger salmon. And they've been doing that. And so our humanoid is actually one of a number of government projects. They tried to create an amphibious soldier, but it got out of hand. So the movie opens with them like ripping off, because it's Corman, Jurassic Park, down to the soldiers with their guns, the cage, the monster inside the cage, only they shoot at it and it escapes down into a sewer. And so then they do the procreation thing, but there's no rapey parts. Instead, they take the women and they put them in this big blobulous thing where they're kind of like this big blob mound where they're kind of inserted into this like thing to where eventually they become pregnant. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But like I said, government's involved. The scientist poses as a British reporter. Again, your main character, you're not sure where he stands. Revenge of the Nerd guy. The brother takes the place of Slattery. And again, you have hatred and conflict between corporation and the eco warriors instead of corporation and Native Americans, is what they kind of spun it with. But what's hilarious about it is if you've seen the original Humanoids from the Deep, you've seen about 20% of the remake because they reused, and I took a note, they reused the dog getting killed. They reused that footage. They reused the footage of the hand at the beginning clawing through the net. They reused the house exploding footage. They reused the boat exploding footage. They reused some of the footage of the creatures busting through the boards in the Salmon Fest, because there's a Salmon Fest in this film as well. They
but this is footage from 1980 inserted into a 1996 film. How does that work at all?
Asked Roger Corman, because
I have to go watch this thing.
It kind of works. The problem is you don't really get behind any characters. I mean, this one you're behind Johnny Eagle, and in you know, for the most part, the scientist who's trying to make right what she had initially done, you know, had been a part of. You've got a few characters you can actually hang on to. In the remake, you don't really have that. None of these characters you really give a rat's ass about, because all of them are kind of gray area characters. Even the Eco Warrior guys, they're too played up. It's like the first scene we see with them, they're and I got my C's crossed. There wasn't an exploded, I don't think, belly. No, there was an exploded belly in the original. Anyway, they're doing water testing, the scientist kids, and they're pouring it in, and the water, whatever test, turns red, and the one guy just goes like, and they do a headshot of each of his four buddies who also go, oh. What? They all react to this test that you don't know yet what he's trying to test for, but it's just funny. It just plays off. I'm like, why did you? I mean, the only reason I could think he made it was because it does scale back on a lot of the exploitation factors that you had in the original 1980 film. Though the trailers before the film of the 1996 film are just as exploitive as the 1980 movie. So I have no idea exactly what was going on. And they do a twist. Well, if you're going to watch it, I don't want to ruin the end for you, but they do a cliffhanger, but they throw a different angle on the cliffhanger. But it's a weird. I watched them back to back, and the first one, outside of the problematic scenes, is written and done so much better than the remake. The remake one is definitely 1996 schlock for sure.
So it's Fred Snapper with roid rage and that.
Yeah, it basically is, and they don't live in like the caves like we saw, because I mean, again, in here as well, in the 1981, when they go searching for these the fish guys, they're in caves and they're out in kind of the open, in that you can see them. In the remake, the fish guys live in an underwater cave, so there's an underwater cave there. So that's where they insert all of the ladies into this big blob to inseminate them rather than doing it themselves.
So they're doing it biologically correct.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. More biologically, I guess, correct is the eggs and the fertilization type thing.
Yeah.
I guess, you know. And I think we'll wrap it up here because, yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting film. Just one final note, Ian, it's the Bacon Nexus again. We've got another incident of the Bacon Nexus. You remember what the Bacon Nexus was, right? We came up with it last time, of how everything still seems to be connected ever since I did 52 Degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, what did I miss?
A sequel was planned and set to be released in 1991 by 20th Century Film Corporation and was to be produced by Golan.
Oh,
of Canon Films, but it never materialized.
Oh, wow.
Well, thank God for small miracles, eh?
This could have been a Canon sequel.
Oh,
dude, man. This could have been a Canon sequel.
Never say never.
Never say never, right? Instead, we got the Goofy remake. So there you have it, folks. Humanoids of the Deep. Ian, final thoughts with Humanoids from the Deep. I keep saying of the deep, from the deep. Yes, Humanoids from the Deep. Final thoughts with this film.
Well, in French, the word "from" is the same as the word for "of."
So
you're good.
Good.
No, it's not a canon film, but it is a cannery film, so you've got that going for it. I recommend it, despite all the uncomfortable parts to it. It's much smarter than you'd expect from a Roger Corman produced, boobs and blood creature feature. And I might, thanks to Mr. Glenn, I might have to track down that fan edit to see. Now I just wonder if it's just an hour-long movie because there's so much ick factor in this thing. But yeah, that might be worth my while.
Absolutely. And Angelique, what about you?
Well, I'll never trust the Gorton's fishermen again.
Wow.
Always wearing that raincoat.
I get little chips for your fish. No, anyway.
He's here for our daughters.
Wow. Alrighty then.
No. It's again, it is a much more intelligent movie than we have given it credit for. I think just it's a Roger Corman movie, and with that, there's a few things you have to expect. They do go a little bit farther, I think, and I'm very curious about this fan edit as well. But I'm like Ian, it's probably going to cut the runtime down to right at 59 minutes, maybe, which is fine. I mean, my thing is if it tells the story and it only takes an hour, okay, I'm fine with that. I'm perfectly fine with that. But no, like I said, I saw this a few years ago for the first time, and despite all the icky parts, it's a good movie, and I watch it every so often just because it's just it's a good popcorn creature feature.
There's more good than bad with it. If you can kind of look past some of those parts, yeah, there is actually. I agree with everything that you guys have said. It surprises you when, before I watched it when I was younger, you just watch it, but watching it critically now I'm like, man, I got to find this fan edit too, because I'm like sitting here going, there is a smart, actually strong female character film in here with both your doctor and especially the wife at the end. I mean, those two scenes showing they're almost more badass than any guy in town.
The guys in this town are lame.
They are. Well, it's all that Olympia beer that they drink.
Maybe they're getting too much mercury from the fish.
Mercury from the fish and Olympia beer. There you go, folks. Avoid that combination. It'll make you a dumb racist hick. There you go.
With awesome Vic Morrow hair.
With awesome hair, though. Your hair will look fantastic. So there is that. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Glenn, for tuning in. I just have to throw one other note to show you how horrible of a film person I am. I recognize the editor of this movie. Mark Goldblatt is the editor of this film. This was only his third film. I'm one of those guys who, for a while in the 90s, would watch a film and go, hey, I know that editor. And sure enough, it was Mark Goldblatt, because he's edited some of my favorite films, including, I believe, Terminator and Terminator 2. So he So this was his third film, though. Guess what his first film was? Piranha.
Yeah, it was a guess.
Yep, Piranha was his first one. I mean, here's the reason why I recognize this name, because he pretty much edited my childhood, and I'm not kidding. I know we're going to the log, but bear with me, because he edited The Howling, Enter the Ninja, Halloween 2, The Terminator, Rambo First Blood Part 2, Commando, Jumpin' Jack Flash, Nightbreed, Predator 2, Terminator 2, Last Boy Scout, Super Mario Brothers, True Lies, Showgirls, Starship Troopers, Armageddon, Hollow Man, Pearl Harbor, Triple X, State of the Union, X-Men Last Stand, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Percy Jackson and Sea Monster, Chappie, and the last film he edited was the Bruce Willis Death Wish. But this guy, but that bulk in the 80s and early 90s, that's like
wow.
So, he's edited some great films and got his cut, and you can kind of see it because this film is, I thought, without the insert scenes, this film is edited well. So, too. So there you have it, folks. Humanoids from the Deep. That's where you're from tonight. And now is a chance for my crew to do their license to shill. So, Angelique, your license to shill is yours. The floor is there.
Right now, mainly you can find me at monstersmadnessandmagic.com. We're cranking out a lot of good shows lately. So
yeah, you are
busy.
You got a lot of great stuff happening over there, definitely. So yeah, check that out. I'll put a link as well in the body of this description of this for the website for this episode. Monsters, Madness, and Magic. I always get Magic and Madness mixed up. I don't know why. I always want to say Monsters, Magic, and Madness, but it's
because it's madness.
It is madness. And I am madness, but it's fantastic material, and you guys are doing great work over there, and they even let me contribute occasionally, so they're too kind. There,
love to have you.
And Ian, floor is yours, sir. You've got a lot of stuff going on as well. Please shill away.
Well, thank you. I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. Most of the time I'm on YouTube nowadays. If you find Kicking the Seat on YouTube, just doing movie reviews and interviews and stuff. And starting on Friday, I don't know if this will be up by then, but if it's not, we're going to be doing it for 6 weeks. We have the latest in our Friday live stream series. We're going to be talking about The Falcon and the Winter Soldier in a weekly recap. Fridays at 8:30 Central. So drop by. Mark will be hopefully with us on camera this weekend. If not, at the very least in the chat, but I hope you'll be able to see your lovely face again in a couple of days. And we'd love to have you. Thank you.
Yeah, I have noticed that the episodes I was on are your lowest viewed, so I apologize for that. No,
that is not true. That is not true.
No, that's not true. There's fun shows, great shows there as well. Yes, check out Ian's stuff and Angelique's stuff. A fantastic discussion tonight. I know we went a little long, but thank you both as always. I appreciate you. I appreciate our listeners. 15 years here on the YouTube. We're coming up on like 7 years on the podcast, or 6 years, 6 or 7 years here doing the podcast, which I didn't think would go past 1 year. And it's because we got people listening, and we get more people listening all the time. So check it out, folks. Check out our Patreon. You can get early access to videos that we post. I've been putting out content fairly regularly now, recently. And so you get early access to those videos. Depending on the tier, you can get an exclusive spoiler room episode. Right now, it looks like we will be doing our own recap. Me and Honorable Son number 1 will be continuing our something we started with the WandaVision episodes. We'll be talking about Falcon and Winter Soldier. So it's fun to hear me talk to my son and my son having opinions. He has a lot of opinions. I don't know where he got that from. And finally, quick plug, July 9th. Right now, I have an AMA planned. Don't have a time yet, but we're going to do a spoiler, Final Cut, Special Mark Productions, AMA for our 15th anniversary. Tentative planning of going over, doing some commentary on some of the early videos I posted and whatever questions you might have to ask us. So we thank Glenn for tuning in through the chat. Always great to have folks chatting. And yes, folks, if you want to get in on the chat as well, and not just on the podcast, check us out on the YouTube channel, where you can catch us live pretty much every Tuesday. there's still going to be Tuesdays from here on out for a while. So got a lot of great stuff coming. So enough of my rambling. We'll just now say good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.